Okay, we're going to talk about this. And we're going to talk about this, the use of props. So, in my latest podcast, I mentioned LawTube and Emily D. Baker, who is amazing. For those of you who are not aware, there is a group of really amazingly funny, brilliant lawyers. There are a bunch of amazingly funny, brilliant lawyers that do YouTube explanations of cases and kind of break down how the law works and what's going on. And collectively, they're referred to as LawTube. And there's just so many wonderful folks, you know, Ian Runkle of the Bailey, Rob of Law and Lumber, all of, just a whole group of amazing people. And one of them is Emily D. Baker. And one of the reasons I wanted to come on and talk about that is because we mentioned her in our recent podcast. And I had made a conversation or had conversation with a new speaker recently about the use of props. And I said, props are a lot like, a deck. If you use it, that's fine, but you have to be able to work without it. And, there are times when it might throw you off. But why would you ever use props? Well, if you're doing a lot of explaining things, you're streaming on YouTube or you're doing like what I'm doing here, sometimes the topics might get a little fraught, or you might be analyzing something where you're looking at it and doing oh dear Lord, what is that? Which is what happens with Emily a lot, is she's covering cases and every once in a while it's like, when does YouTube allow me to curse? That sort of thing. So what I want to do is introduce you to a couple of lovely little tools. One of which, as I bop my microphone, hello microphone. So this is a screaming goat. If you are someone who works in a virtual space and you have meetings and you're doing presentations with people, every once in a while, there is a goat scream moment in your life. So I strongly encourage you to get a goat because these are hysterical. And it's also really nice because then you can avoid doing what I would do, which is I would have to be careful to think of, all right, am I going to be cursing in this situation or not? And instead, the goat explains it for you. So why would you use a prop? For exactly the reason I just did. Every once in a while, it's a nice palate cleanser. It's a nice change. Obviously, you have to think about your audience. Obviously, you need to think in terms of who are you presenting to? There's a lot of groups I would never, ever do this with. But I have presented at companies. I mean, I think I might have worked at done training at every single company in Boston, possibly, but all over the US, all over Europe. And you need to be careful with your sense of humor. But if you're doing really dry material, especially if you're doing things like compliance or you're doing presenting on something that is really stiff, and you have a crowd with the right sense of humor, then you could, if you need to, say, okay, we have had this full moment. Now we are going to have a pickle cleanse. Yodeling pickle. I will warn you about the yodeling pickle. If you start playing it, it will not stop. So if you hit the button again to stop it, you will start the cycle again and you will have eternal yodeling pickle. I have these props because I do a lot of different types of online and in-person presenting, and some of them are subjects that are just a little on the boring side. And you have to acknowledge where your audience is. If you think everybody's fried, or if you think we've come across something that's just unbelievably frustrating, you could always use a prop. As with anything in public speaking, you have to be able to work without it. And you have to be able to adapt in the moment, which is something that all the law tubers are great at. If you are a presenter, you've had things go wrong. That's pretty normal. And one of the reasons why people find public speaking to be very stressful sometimes is because adapting in the moment is something that comes with a lot of experience, but it can also be taught. So You don't have to go through what I've done and other people have done and have 20 years in the trenches of every time something's thrown at you, you adapt. You can actually learn that skill by practicing and doing essentially like a hot potato. I'm going to be on a panel with people, so we're going to practice handing things off to each other and communicating back and forth and doing techniques that allow you to practice your skill set. Think in terms of what you want the audience experience to be. Because as always, if what you're saying and what you're doing is far more important than the reception of it by the audience, I think your priorities are a little out of whack, because presenting and speaking, whether you're selling, whether you're pitching, whether you're teaching, it doesn't matter. This is a communication with other humans. It's a performance art. That does not mean it's not authentic. It doesn't mean it's fully real, because it is. The word performance simply means you are using all of the tools at your disposal to help get that message across. Okay? So if you need to, screaming goat, yodeling pickle. Other than that, if you have an important webinar, speech, anything like that coming up, and you want to be able to prep for it quickly, find some people to work with or hire a coach. If you want to work with a coach, I am available. Give me a DM and we'll talk about it. We'll hop on a discovery call. That is it for today. Everyone, let me know in the comments if you have a prop, and if you do, what kind of prop it is, because I'm really curious. Bye, everybody. Talk to you later.